Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to this week's card. Today I'm using a couple of new products from the Stampin' Up! Annual Catalog. The first is a die called Honeycomb Hive, and I've got it sticking to my magnetic Stampin' Storage sheet there. And I've got the matching stamp set called Honeycomb Hello. It's got a bunch of cool little things that you can put inside these hexagons. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock and I'm going to run it through the Sizzix with this die. Now when I first get it out, I'm going to pop out all of the little free hexagons in the middle, and then I'll stick my paper piercer underneath an edge and then just use that to pry it out. And it comes out pretty easily. And then I decided I wanted some black hexagons, so I'm going to go ahead and run it through with some black cardstock. And then I'm going to grab my stamp set and pull out all the stamps I'm going to use. I think there are 15 total stamps in this set, and there are a lot of really cute ones. Okay, I'm going to prep my Stamp-A-Majig sheet, and I just pulled some Pool Party ink. It doesn't really matter what ink you use. And I'm going to stamp the corner with all the different stamps I'm going to be using because I want to make sure that they are lined up in the center of each one of these hexagons. So I'm going to take my hexagon and I'm going to adhere it with some tape runner to my craft sheet. And then I'll use my Stamp-A-Majig sheet that I prepped and some Versamark ink. Make sure I've got it stamped right there in the center. I'm going to take some white embossing powder and cover up my Versamark. And if I didn't use a embossing buddy here, so I have a little bit of stray embossing powder on my black cardstock, so I just use a stipple brush to wipe that away. And then I use a paper piercer to hold it down while I heat up my powder. Now there were a couple of spots that didn't get covered with embossing powder, so I just took a white gel pen to fill them in. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do, actually I decided to go ahead and adhere those two hexagons so I could get good placement on the ampersand. So I'll use my Stamp-A-Majig again, and I'm going to stamp this in VersaFine Black Onyx ink, which is a pigment ink, so I can put some clear embossing powder on there because it'll stay wet for a while, and then I'll heat that to set it so it's also shiny. Now this is a new set called Project Life Point and Click, I think it's called. Anyway, it's got some really cute different little things in it for your pocket scrapbooking. So it had a cute little arrow in it, so I'm going to use the arrow from that set. I'm actually going to do a video later on of the Project Life stuff, so stay tuned for that. And again, I'm using the VersaFine Black ink, and I'm going to heat it to set it after I put some clear embossing powder on there. Alright, so I've got some peacock feathers. I'm just going to put a little bit of it on my craft sheet, and I've got a blender pen. And I think the problem is my blender pen was too dry. It's kind of old, so the the ink came out a little bit too dark, and so I tried to blend it a little too much, and then my paper started to peel up, and then I decided to just toss it. So I made a new one and decided to use water, and so I have my aqua painter, and I'm covering the whole thing with water first, and then I'll pick up a little bit of ink, and always start on the left hand side, move to the right, and you don't want to use too much because it's not watercolor paper. This is just Love Letter Memento Luxe ink, which is also pigment ink, so I can clear emboss this as well. So I have all my little sayings and little items all shiny. You can see how great that looks with the clear embossing powder. Now I'm going to work on my watercolor piece for the background. I've got peacock feathers and barn door. Just put a little bit on my craft sheet, and then I'm going to spray my watercolor paper with water. So spray the whole thing with water, and then also my ink with water. I'm using a Ranger water brush, which has a much thicker tip than my other brushes, and I'm just going to pick it up and gently kind of place the color very evenly on my cardstock. Now I wiped this a little bit away because I had some overspray from when I sprayed my ink, but anyway, I'm using Ranger watercolor paper, which is new to me. I just got it. I decided to try it. I really like how it's white. It's a very bright white color, but it's also a lot thicker than the Strathmore watercolor paper that I use. which is fine, but when it warps much thicker, and it's a little harder to lay flat like with some adhesive than my Strathmore watercolor paper is. So I do like the fact that it's really white paper. But anyway, so this is the watercolor panel, and I'm going to make it really, really smooth, so I'm using a lot of water, and I keep spraying it, if you notice, with water. Now I decided I want a little bit more red, and I'm kind of putting the red where my little hexagon items are, because I want it to be right behind there. And you see it got a little bit of brown in between the red and the blue, like that line, so I just sprayed it with some more water, and it really faded that kind of brown mottled line. So alright, it's time to put it all together. I'm going to adhere that heart hexagon that I had clear embossed, and I'm going to put some Stampin' Up! Foam adhesive dimensionals on all of the solid hexagons here. And then I'll peel off the backing and adhere that to the watercolor panel, which I've let dry. I just like to let it dry naturally if I can, rather than putting a heat tool to it. And then I'm going to adhere the arrow with another dimensional so it's raised up. And then I'm going to take my tape runner and put some tape on the back of that, and I'm using a Hero Arts cardstock in black that has white on one side and black on the other, and that way I get a black matting without adding yet another piece of paper. So that's it. I actually made it for my husband for our anniversary. It's our 24th anniversary. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.